Welcome. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to play Rule the Waves 2 with a very small fleet? I hadn't, but I recently completed a set of tutorials and I used a very small fleet as an illustration. And it got me thinking, well, what would it actually be like to play with? My name's Dickie, and this is my Wargames Analysis channel, where I like to take a closer look at the games I love to play. So, what difference would it make? Well, I hope the pace of the game will be quicker. Fewer ships, fewer things to mess around with, faster game. You certainly don't have to worry about foreign stations. The game doesn't require you to send what few ships you have out into the Empire. Next, I guess, is because you have so few of them, every single ship is going to be precious. The loss of even a single one, particularly a major ship, could dramatically tip the balance of power. And this might make the game quite volatile. Possibly, for example, it may shorten wars, because once you've got a superiority over your opponent, you will crush them easily. It certainly means you can't be cavalier about the loss of any ship. Even a destroyer represents something like 5% of your annual naval budget, and a battleship represents 1 or 2 years of your budget, all in one ship. Saving money is going to be absolutely crucial. You will have to, well, I was going to say the phrase, run a tight ship, but you know what I mean. And I'm wondering, would it be better to go for a jeune école kind of tactic, where you emphasize destroyers rather than major ships? I'm not going to try that in this playthrough, because I think it makes you too vulnerable to blockade, but it's certainly worth thinking about, and I might try that later. Equally, you might want to play with U-boats as your dominant force. That's certainly a very cost-effective strategy, and might well be a very simple war-winning one. So, some interesting questions to explore. Here's my first attempt at examining a fleet that might do this. I've chosen Germany, because I think they're a really nice middling fleet. They start off the game the 5th most powerful, but obviously their strong economy is set to grow and grow. The other setup features of this game, aside from a very small fleet, is I've limited the air bases to a maximum of 60 aeroplanes. Obviously that's quite a long time in the future. 60 is as low as it will go. I've used historical resources. If you go with the game resources, you'll probably get around about twice as much money. So I have made it harder. I've also gone with varied technology, because I like to. I'm going to play in captain's mode in this Let's Play series, because I need to have all the control I possibly can. So let me take you through the ships I've designed. So first of all, my Weissenburg battleships. They, I think, are relatively standard, except I've gone for speed. Now, when I initially thought about this, I thought, Dickie, don't get seduced into building those glory ships with the best of everything. You have to save money, be mean, get the price down as low as you can. And obviously, in 1900, speed costs a lot of money. And these battleships come out at 53,000, when they could easily have been 48,000, for example. In their armaments, they are perfectly straightforward. 11-inch guns, the biggest that Germany has, 18 6-inch guns, and 14 3-inch guns, and 3 torpedo tubes. I like to have an aft torpedo because in a few years' time, when these ships are obsolescent, I imagine they might be involved in a chase where they're the ones being chased. And having a stern torpedo, I think, might keep the enemy a bit more honest. Plus, you never know, they might get lucky with it. Where I've really saved is in the armor protection. You can't have everything good. Something has to give way, so it only has a 7-inch scheme, which is fine for the weapons now, but obviously will be distinctively limited in a few years' time. The speed, however, I wanted because I wanted this ship to have a long life. They cost so much that I'm going to be reluctant to scrap it quickly because any replacement would be really expensive. So to give it that long life, I want it to have a good enough speed that my whole battle fleet isn't limited to 18 knots for years to come. I've also used the classic weight savers of giving it a short range and cramped accommodation. This is Germany. I haven't gone for the low freeboard because this is the North Sea, although it's tempting. With a low freeboard, I would get another 600 tons, and that's enough with a little saving here and there for an inch of extra armour. Difficult choices. With the Victoria Louise class of armoured cruiser, I've also gone for 11-inch guns. Now, effectively this makes it a pre-dreadnought battle cruiser, and obviously its protection scheme is light. So you'll notice a theme here. I am risking taking dangerous critical hits in battle. I'm hoping that the extra speed will get them out of too much danger. And the Victoria Louise, as an armoured cruiser, should be able to crush equivalent armoured cruisers. In other respects, it's, again, a perfectly straightforward armoured cruiser, possibly a little bit light on the secondary armament, but at 40,000 I wanted to keep the costs down to something that was reasonable. I have designed, but not built, a protected cruiser, the Gila, which is a sort of fairly straightforward 6-inch and 4-inch gun vessel, 21 knots, 4,000 tons, 2.5-inch armour scheme. I decided not to build the Gila because it didn't feel like it was adding anything particularly fantastic to the mix. Yes, it means the scouting ability of my fleet is very, very poor, but realistically, I'm probably not likely to go to war for 2 years, possibly 3, and in that time, I might be able to build a better protected cruiser, and ideally a faster one. Ideally, a protected cruiser should have a 3-knot advantage over its battleships in order to do the extra manoeuvring required by a scout. The destroyers are perfectly bog standard. 3 torpedo tubes, not center mounted, all of them, because of the usual restrictions. A 4-inch gun, which does impose a slight rate of fire modifier. This is partly my general way of going with destroyers, but it's actually being backed up by a lovely design study that Kotori 87 has done. There'll be a link down below in the channel. Well worth a watch. So that's the basic fleet. Under construction, I have Brandenburg, a second of the Weissenberg class, and Augusta Victoria, another armoured cruiser. And therein probably lies my problem. With a very small fleet, it's really difficult to build 2 heavy ships at the same time. So what's my plan? Well, number 1, and possibly 2 and 3, save money wherever I can. Obviously, I'm going to have to put ships into reserve, possibly mothball. Let's just reserve all of these. Knocks off a few hundred, but not nearly enough. I'm not going to build up my dock size. I'm going to think about building a lot of my ships in other people's docks. Let them spend the money on increasing dock size. I'm not going to build coastal fortifications, and obviously I'm not going to build up overseas bases in the main. I'm going to say yes every time the game gives me an option to increase my budget. I'm going to try not to build glory ships, but as you can see, I'm a bit vulnerable. I'm going to use most of the tricks of short range and cramped accommodation, which you can get away with Germany, because in their home water, they face Britain and France and Russia. Obviously, if I want to take on a more distant opponent, I will have to have a medium-ranged ship without cramped accommodation. If I go down a submarine route, I'm going to build coastal submarines because they're half the price. And wherever possible, I'm going to court allies. Usually in the big games, allies only add a little bit to your victory points and so on. But because this is very small, they might make a more significant contribution. For doctrines, I'm going to probably not use my favourite gunnery, partly because in 1900, gunnery is so rubbish that making rubbish gunnery a bit better still gives you rubbish gunnery, and partly because I think a lot of opportunities to sink the enemy will come from nighttime engagements and engagements with limited visibility when the torpedo may well be the weapon of choice. So I'm probably going to go with night and torpedo, but not yet. Doctrine takes a year to come into place, but we are 2 to 3 years away from a war. So I'll save my money and try and judge properly when to start the doctrines. Intelligence, I'm going to keep low. So I've set Russia just as low. I could also do France, but I'll see who do I start to raise tensions with, and then when those tensions are significant, introduce intelligence. This does mean I won't be getting extra research from spying. I haven't got the money. For research, I'm going to just emphasize the things that Germany has a natural advantage at, plus, of course, guns, because we all like better guns. Everything else is set to low, and I've kept the budget at 10%. Yes, it would be nice to push it all the way to 12, but the returns on 12% are quite diminishing, and I need to save money. I'm confident that Germany, which starts behind in technology, will quickly gather pace and become average and then probably advanced. Because I'm playing Germany, there is a perennial German problem, which is they have no oil. The only places, certainly at the start of the game, where oil is available from a neutral country is Venezuela and Sumatra. Venezuela is not really an option for Germany because they have no bases in this area at all. Sumatra is a possibility, and the Germans do have bases over here on the edge. So one idea is to, later on when I can afford it, develop a small colonial force and send it out to Southeast Asia in order to be present should Sumatra become available. It's a bit of a long shot, but I can't imagine capturing anything else at the moment, and there's certainly no amphibious invasion targets for Germany in Northern Europe. So that's the small fleet. That's building. That's the amount of money I'm running out by. I'm going to halt construction on the Augusta Victoria, and that's just enough to tip me over into a slight positive balance. So I'm going to run the game now for the next year and see what developments come up, and hopefully build up a small funds chest to be able to spend on something more exciting. So in 1900, we've seen 4 new research bonuses, 2 developments, armour and 1 quality 6-inch guns, and 2 new whole areas, fleet tactics and armour-piercing projectiles. We have a new ally, Italy. Unfortunately, our budget's gone down from 33,000 to 30,000 because of that alliance. With alliances, your tensions go down, and so does your budget. We failed to stop American aggression in Borneo, but we have provoked increased tensions with Russia, intentionally and unintentionally. 1901 has brought forward a rich crop of 7 new research advances in machinery, fire control, subdivision, turrets, light forces, torpedoes, and an extra gun, 5-inch, 0 quality. Our budget has blossomed from 30,000 to 35,000. We've finished the battleship Brandenburg. We've restarted the Augusta Victoria and started the Gila class, but then halted it again, but with improved 6-inch guns. We rejected an attractive offer from Russia to sell some technology for 1.1 thousand, but they are our enemy, probably. We had that rejection repaid by them spying on us, as well as the British. We've worsened tensions with France up to 10, and in response to that, I've started off our doctrine training of torpedoes and night fighting, because next year, war with France is likely. Overall, our balance of power has improved with the inclusion of the Brandenburg in the fleet and with improvements in our budget. So 1902 proved very interesting. We bagged 5 research advances in ship design, submarine, our third gun development, armour-piercing projectiles, and our second armour development. I brought the fleet out of reserve because I wanted to improve its crew quality when tension with France reached 10. The Augusta Victoria was delivered, and so I was able to resume construction of the Healer. The surprise event was that with an active fleet, I was able to occupy Morocco. Equally unexpectedly was the game then required me to station 6,000 tons on foreign station. Now, I hadn't anticipated this. In the game setup, foreign stations was not required, and so none of my ships are equipped for colonial service. So it's be time to bang out some corvettes with a colonial gunboat design. However, October prevented this because our wonderful Italian allies required support in their increasing tensions with France, and that brought tensions up to 12, which means almost certainly war. So far, so normal. The game over these last 3 years hasn't really thrown up any great surprises, except I didn't expect the drop in naval budget when I allied with Italy, and I didn't expect to be required to put ships on foreign stations when I captured Morocco. Lesson learned. I want to look at 4 ways of taking the temperature of the game. I want to look at how the budgets have changed, how the tension levels have risen and fallen, at the comparative fleet strength, and our technological innovation. In terms of budget, you can see here are the raw numbers, but perhaps more easily understood. Here it is in graph form. What is perhaps not so obvious from the numbers is just the enormous lead that Britain has, and a lead that's accelerating. America, in the mid-blue, is also doing perfectly well for itself. Thank you very much. Germany is stuck down in the pack with green France and brown Russia. Germany's the black line, and you can see that dip from our alliance with Italy. And then down in the bottom, orange and yellow, Italy and Japan. With the forthcoming war, I expect all of these expenditures to take a big climb, and I hope that the war is short, because I believe that long wars really help all of your other potential opponents, because you have to pay for war maintenance, they don't. You risk running losing ships, they don't. In terms of tensions, the numbers for January 1900, 1901, 1902 are over here. But again, charting those out makes it more obvious. So this green line with France shows its accelerated tension with us. The light blue line is Britain, who wasn't our target, and you can't control these things. Russia is also slightly tense with us, but that's not going to be a real problem. And then the rest are all pretty fine, with this orange line representing Italy in its alliance with us. And the black line sneaking out here is our own local level of unrest. In terms of fleet strength, I like to look both at the official classifications used by the game. What are battleships, what are dreadnoughts, etc. These are important because the game uses them in the battle generator to match up forces against forces. However, I also like to look at, if you like, the real comparison. How many ships carry 11-inch or bigger guns? In the game, 11-inch guns are large caliber, 10-inch guns are medium, the top of medium caliber. You'll notice that Britain has 5 ships classified as battleships, but only 3 with 11-inch guns or more. Later on, this particular lens becomes unimportant as all the battleships all have big guns, but just at the very beginning, this is a useful distinction to make out because it really changes our comparison. So in terms of battleships, Germany starts at 1 and manages to get a second one, whilst Britain sits pretty with 5 and another 2 on the way. However, in terms of big gun ships, you can see that Germany started with 2, gained a third and then a fourth, and actually leads the world. So my decision to put 11-inch guns on the armoured cruisers seems to have been a good one. However, we'll see what that really is like when battle is joined. For the rest, there's almost no movement, really only America added an extra battleship. Finally, for technology, here are a list of all the technologies. You'll notice some of them are greyed because these areas haven't been discovered yet, against how many technologies in this area were discovered each year. So you can see mainly 1, and you can see that there's been a wide spread of technological developments, with the exception of guns. It's, I think, unusual to get a good gun development every single year. In this column, you get the totals. So 2 for armour development, 1s for everything else, 2 for armour-piercing projectiles. That's partly because in 1900, that area which would have been greyed and unavailable became available. Likewise with fleet tactics, but we haven't had a fleet tactic since then. So in terms of the numbers, you can see 4, 7 and 5 currently. Technically, there's 2 more months of 1902 to go, so there may be another one there, but I've ended it in November because of the beginning of war. A broad spread, nothing to actually really push forward a major new type of ship, but pretty steady growth. And that's it for this first part of this Let's Play Germany Very Small series. I hope you've enjoyed it. Next, we should be having a nice good old-fashioned war with France and see what happens with that. Thanks for watching.